Ladies and gentlemen, meine Damen und Herren, wow, I'm very excited. You know, it's fantastic to be here and to welcome all of you to DrupalCon Munich. You know, when I look at this audience, when I look at the people in this room, I see a lot of people, well, that I've gotten to know pretty well over years. But I also see a lot of new faces. And I know Jem has asked this question before, but who here is attending DrupalCon for the first time? Please raise your hand if this is your first DrupalCon. Wow, wow. All these people who raised their hands, well, all of you are people, well, maybe you're new to Drupal. Maybe you just didn't have the chance to come to DrupalCon before, but you might also have experience with other technologies. You might be coming from different communities. And it's great to have all of you here. When we chose the tagline, "Open up, connecting systems and people," what we meant to do was to have more than just a catchy phrase. We really wanted to have something that is an integral part of this conference. And I think the fact that there's so many new people in this room, it means that apparently we must have done at least something right. As Jem and Robert showed before, DrupalCon, it's definitely a technology conference, but it's not the technology that makes DrupalCon what it is. What makes DrupalCon such a fantastic conference, it's the people, it's you. And so I would encourage all of you to talk to each other, to engage into conversations, to exchange ideas, because we have a lot to learn from each other. Organizing a DrupalCon is itself one of those opportunities where you get to learn a lot from other people. In this case, learning from the people who have organized previous DrupalCons. They shared with us what they did that worked, what they did that didn't work. And this passing on of the knowledge is really important. But doing this continuously over many conferences each year, over many years, it's difficult. There's a lot of information that can get lost, contact information, knowing how to do this, how to do that. As you can imagine, DrupalCon is, well, it's a big event. There's a lot of things to take care of. And it wouldn't be possible to have that continuity without the Drupal Association that provides a lot of support to make this feasible. DrupalCon wouldn't be the same without the Drupal Association. And so I would like to welcome on stage Jacob Redding, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the Drupal Association.
Thank you. Thank you, Florian. Welcome, everybody, to Munich, Germany. I'm pleased to be here. I'm actually really excited to be here at DrupalCon in Munich, not only because this took a year of effort from a great local community that just put their heart and soul into this conference and turned it into an amazing event, but also as an open source project, we're not only in the country of Germany, which has adopted open source heavily, but we're also in Munich, which I'm not sure if you guys know, but it's one of the largest municipalities that has adopted open source, not only on the web, but on the desktop throughout its entire government system. And it's kind of an amazing accomplishment of Munich. So my name is Jacob Redding, the Executive Director of the Drupal Association. And my first question to you guys is, I'm kind of curious, how many of you have heard of the Drupal Association before today? That is awesome. I asked that question probably 2 years ago, and very few people kind of understood. They're like, okay, yeah, I know, I've heard of the Drupal Association a little bit. But the Drupal Association's been here, and we exist to foster and support the project, the community, and its growth. In short, we exist to support you everybody here at DrupalCon, everybody contributing code to the project. And we do this in a number of different ways. The first is Drupal.org. I love this photo. The infrastructure team hates me for using it. But that is actually Drupal.org, one of the servers running our website. So we not only support the servers of Drupal.org, where they're co-located at the Oregon State University's open source lab, we also help to maintain the software infrastructure in conjunction with a great team of community leaders in the community infrastructure team. Part of what we're doing right now is we're upgrading Drupal.org to Drupal 7, so that we're on the latest version of our software, which is a big project. We take care of the Git infrastructure in the code repository, so whenever you check in code, we're there to make sure that that code is there now and in the future and is always available. We do more, though, than just support the hardware and conferences such like this. We also support you out there in the community. So we have a grant program called the Cultivation Grant. If you have an idea of running a meetup or a camp or a sprint or something you want to do back in your home country or in your home city, and you need assistance with that, we're there to help you because we want to help you grow your community. We connect businesses together through something called BizConnect. And we also provide travel scholarships and stipends to get people who couldn't afford to come to DrupalCon here. So far, we've traveled over 100 people in to DrupalCons around the world from countries like India, Pakistan, from a number of different countries around the world. And we make one commitment to you guys, that as we do our work, as we accept funds and donations, as we sell tickets to places like DrupalCon, that we'll be open and transparent with you. So in everybody's bag, when you picked up your registration, there is an annual report in there. And we do this once a year, and in that annual report, we report where did that money go? How did we spend it? What did it go to? So that's our commitment to you. Just like our software is open and free, our association is also open and transparent. So the question is, why do we exist as an association? Why does an open source project exist? And the answer to that question is, we exist because of you guys, because our community is growing, and we want to see a strong and a very strong community that lasts not only for the next few years, but endures to this project as we grow it. So I want to welcome back up Florian to the stage. I want you guys to take a minute to learn more about the Drupal Association as well. Find somebody with a blue shirt and ask them, why did you join the Drupal Association? Why did you become a member of that association? Or visit association.drupal.org. Florian, I'll give the stage back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Now I have, well, of course, everybody's waiting for the keynote, but I have a couple short announcements that I need to make, logistical details. The first one is that if you can't find seats in this room, there's the overflow rooms, there's Atlanta, Garmisch-Partenkirchen, and the Cuvier room at the Sheraton. All of these rooms will be available for all of the keynotes. So yeah, there's plenty of space. Second point is food, catering. There's going to be a buffet. It's going to be here, it's going to be upstairs, it's going to be downstairs, and it's also going to be at the Sheraton. So no matter where you are, there should be food near you. You don't need to travel all the way back to here or to the last place where you saw that there might be food. There's going to be food everywhere. Don't need to travel around.
Yeah.
One thing that's great about DrupalCon is that you get a lot of stuff for free. Among others, fantastic stickers. And these stickers look very cool on your laptop. However, they don't look that cool on hotel walls or hotel properties. If you put them there, we need to pay to have those removed. It's very expensive, so please don't do it. Thank you. One thing that we would like you to do, however, is to fill out session evaluations. At the end of every session that you attend, you can take a minute to fill out the session evaluation form. You can even do that during the questions and answer, so you don't need to stay in the room after the end of the session. This feedback is very valuable to us because it lets us know, have we met your expectations with the quality of the conference? It is also very valuable to the speakers because they know what they can improve to make their sessions even better. There's two more things. One of them is a group picture. Unfortunately, not everyone can fit in this room. There's a lot of people here, but yeah, we have more people in the overflow rooms. Not everybody fits in here. So we're going to meet outside the main entrance of the Westin Grand right after the end of the keynote. So please, everyone, just go there. Don't wait in the halls. Don't block the flow. Don't go on detour to somewhere else. Go get coffee or something like that. Let's just go there. We have a little bit of a surprise waiting for you there. Should be a lot of fun. And talking about fun, well, social events. That's one of the big traditions of DrupalCon, is to have one big social event on Tuesday night. And we really paid a lot of attention to the feedback that we got from you, from the community, about what people wanted. And when we realized that the one thing that people want the most is to have a place where you can have a nice conversation with people in a relaxed atmosphere, we thought, hey, let's go to a beer garden. Woo! So we called the beer garden and we told them, hello, we would like to come with 1,000 people. And they're like, okay. It's like, we're going to make a reservation for 1,000 people. It's like, okay, just come. What, no big deal. So that's what we're going to do. It's the unofficial, semi-official DrupalCon event. We're going to meet at the Chinese Tower. It's a Bavarian beer garden in the English Garden. I know that's a little bit confusing. Bavarian beer garden, Chinese Tower. When you see it, you'll know what it is. We're going to meet there around 7-ish. And the best way to get there, it's on foot. It's half an hour walk. It's doable. But you can also take the bus, the 154, which takes you directly there. You get off at the stop Chinesischer Turm. And you can also take the tram line 18 at the stop Tivolistraße. And there should be a sign from there. So I'm really looking forward to see all of you there tonight. It should be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, there's one more person that I would like to introduce. I have told you in the past that we would have a special guest. Do you remember the picture with a question mark on the face? We have today a very special guest. So please help me introduce Captain Drupal.
Good morning, everyone. I am Captain Drupal, the greatest Drupal superhero on Earth. Of course, my identity is secret, but I can tell you this much. I work at Wunderkraut. Just a few days ago, Wunderkraut had 4 employees and 1 office here in Munich. But I have used my superpowers in the last couple of weeks merging Wunderkraut with well-known Drupal shops Merra, Node1, and Crimson. I could really use a slide here. Yeah, that's me. I'll try and do this. That's me again, with the villains. And there I'm saving the day. And that's my logo. And here we go. So the result is a new mighty Wunderkraut with 15 offices in 9 countries and some 140 employees. And I'd like to ask all of you Wunderkraut guys here today to stand up and say your name simultaneously right now. Thank you very much. Come meet us at the Wunderkraut booth. From one hero to another. The next keynote speaker is certainly one of my personal heroes and also my personal costume designer, Mr. Dries Buytaert. This keynote will be a little different. It's going to be in the form of an interview. So therefore, I also welcome on stage the founder of Chapter 3 and Pantheon, Mr. Josh Koenig. Yes, I could use a lift.
Okay.
Thank you.
See if we can take care of this.
Good to see you as well.
So this is an idea that we did at a Bay Area Drupal camp last fall, and it was a big hit, to do a little bit more of an interactive, personal question and answer session rather than a traditional keynote. So I hope you all enjoy it. I've solicited questions from the community, both online and in person, and I have a number of things to get through to talk to Dries about. We'll also, of course, see a preview of Drupal 8 and talk a lot about that. So let's get right to it.
Sure.
So you're looking good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I just spent a couple, well, actually 30 hours with my family in Belgium before going to Munich, so it was fun.
It's nice that you can take such a luxury as 30 hours with your family.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll go back after DrupalCon and spend
good.
a little bit more time.
Good. Well, and you know, you live in the States now. Coming back to Europe, I mean, how does that feel? Does it feel like coming home, or do you notice things you miss?
Right. I mean, I really like living in the U.S., to be honest, but, you know, I love Europe as well.
Right.
And so I don't really know where home is. I think I have a couple of different homes.
Yeah.
And Europe definitely feels like home to me.
Well, that's
And
nice.
there's a lot of small things that I miss from Europe, like kind of being outdoors and some food, you know, related things and stuff. So it's nice to be back, and I kind of like load myself up with like carbonated iced tea and, you know, all of these other little things which they don't have in the U.S. So it's good.
I certainly am enjoying my time here. It's a beautiful city. So let's get right into it. I mean, we've got a lot of ground to cover, and of course, one of the most important topics is Drupal 8. And I understand you have a short sort of preview of what we have to look forward to. So let's take a look at that.
Yeah. So I spent, you know, a little bit of time preparing, and I have like a 10-minute presentation which I want to give you a visual preview of Drupal 8. So I'll get that started right now. Here we go. And so it runs automatically. So I have to sort of keep up with my voice on what's about to be shown. So as I said, it's a Drupal 8 preview. I couldn't show everything because not everything is visual, so I'm going to focus on some of the more visual things. Also, a quick disclaimer, some of the things which I'm about to show are not done yet. Some of them are in development, basically. So I'm going to be talking about a number of big ideas. You can see them on the screen. So let's start with mobile. Right? Obviously, mobile is a big deal. It's something that we have to do because that's where the world is going. So if you look at Drupal 7 or Drupal 6, for example, you see that there's a big problem. There's like scrolling, and we're fixing this in Drupal 8 with responsive design. Buytaert, for example, is now responsive in Drupal 8. As part of Spark, we've also been tinkering with a new mobile-friendly admin theme on a desktop that looks like this. You can see there's a new toolbar, which we are proposing, which is really simplified. And then there's also a new dashboard with sort of a new shortcut area at the top. And then on the side, there's kind of like a pull-out menu that slides in and slides out. And that's important because if you look at, again, Drupal 7 on a mobile, you see that the menu, it doesn't really, it wraps, looks pretty ugly. And so this new toolbar on Drupal 8 on a mobile phone will look like this, so much cleaner. And then the way you use a pull-out menu is you click it, it slides out, you can navigate wherever you want to navigate to, and then when you're done navigating, you can fold it back in. And so it's one toolbar that works on all devices. I know. We like Internet Explorer, but supporting older versions makes it a little challenging to build mobile apps. And one of the things we've done is we've adopted HTML5. Part of HTML5 is these new form element types that you can see on the screen. And what's cool about them, if you use the right type on a mobile phone or smartphone, you'll get the right kind of keyboard, right? So if you're entering a telephone number, it will be you'll just get the digits. So that's a little bit on mobile. On the authoring side of things, people in the community have looked at the content creation page. This is the Drupal 7 one. And so there's a proposal out there to change it and to move some of the things which right now you can see at the bottom, to effectively move that to the sidebars. And generally clean up the form a little bit, which we believe will be something that people that create content on a daily basis will really like. So that's pretty exciting to me. A couple of other things which we're working in is inline editing. It's what I call true WYSIWYG. And so anywhere on a node page, you can sort of toggle into edit mode, as you can see here. And then every field becomes clickable. You can click into it, and you can immediately edit it and click Save. And it works also for body fields, where we get a WYSIWYG as well. In sort of the body of the nodes, you can move images around, stuff like that. And it works for all fields. It also works for users. It also works for dates and so forth, taxonomy terms and all of these things. So, I think it's going to be a great feature that I haven't seen in many other open source CMSs, and quite bullish about the impact that will have on usability. Another cool feature is viewports preview. So there's this little widget at the top, and you can slide it from desktop to tablet. And what happens is you kind of get a preview of what your site will look like on a tablet. You can also slide it to iPhone or smartphone, and you can see what your page will look like on a smartphone. So really cool, again, for doing mobile, building mobile websites. Web services, obviously a big deal. A lot of effort is going into web services. We want to integrate with third-party services, like, say, Mapbox. But we also want to build native mobile apps on top of Drupal. And again, that's where we would use web services as well. But also integrate with front-end frameworks like Backbone.js or Sprout Core. And then, of course, Drupal to Drupal communication, where you may want to synchronize data between two Drupal sites and the likes. And so all of these things will become easier with Drupal 8. Layouts is something else which we're working on. We've built a responsive layout designer. So what you see here is you can look at one layout and how it looks on multiple devices. And then you can actually, sort of reconfigure the layout and move things around, move regions on the page, and it will automatically work. Will automatically create the different viewports, really, if you want. So it's something which I believe has a potential of being revolutionary. I haven't seen this in any other CMS yet, and it builds mobile and responsive design right into the core of the platform. So very excited about that. Multilingual, obviously a very big deal, especially in Europe. Multilingual is a very complex problem. We fixed it partially in core, and then we added a bunch of contributed modules. And it's hard because there's so many modules and so many things you need to configure. And Gabor has been doing an excellent job trying to simplify that by bringing more things into core and by, sort of reducing some of the complexity in the modules, but also in the UIs and things like that. So I'm very excited about that. Views in core, obviously. Yep. Views is everywhere. People use it for all sorts of things. I think it's important that we, try to move it into core. So good progress is being made there as well. It's not done yet, by any chance. And then the last thing I want to talk about is configuration management. Also important for, larger websites, organizations, teams, people that use development in a production environment, like hopefully most of us do. So the problem right now with Drupal 7 is if you want to push configuration from dev to production, you kind of end up overriding your content. And we've come up with all sorts of solutions not to, but none of them are truly elegant, I would say. And so in Drupal 8, we're rethinking this from the ground up, and we're creating a better separation between configuration and content, so we can just push the content. And we don't need to just push the configuration, and we don't need to push the content. So here's a little video of what that looks like right now. And so Angie recorded this video. But what she's going to do, she has two websites. Right now, we're looking at the development website, right, the dev environment. And so she's going to make a few changes to the site name and the slogan, very, very quick and easy changes. So what's happening right now when she saves, it's actually saved in a database, but also to files, where we can export it to files. So you can see she made the changes. Now she's going to go back, and what she wants to do is she wants to push these configuration changes to a production environment. Okay, so first, she needs to export these changes. And so right now there's a UI that looks like this. You basically export the changes, and what that does, it exports the configuration as a file. And so you're looking at a terminal right now, and so you can see there is one modified file, which is a configuration file called system.site.yml. And so you can actually do a diff as well, which is pretty cool. So you can audit the changes that people have made to your site, which is something which you don't have today. And so because she's using Git, she's going to commit these changes, these configuration changes, to her Git repository. And so now it's versioned, and so you can roll back to older versions as well if you would like. And now she's switching to the production environment. So you can see has the same old configuration, but the content looks different, right? So she also switches the terminal to the terminal of the Git of the production environment, and see she effectively does a Git pull, meaning she pulls down these changes from Git. And so now they've been applied to the production environment. So the only thing she needs to do right now is basically click one more button to import these, changed configurations on file into her production website. So she goes back to the to this UI, she clicks import, and we're done. And there we go. We managed to, Yeah, a lot of great work by Greg there, and the rest of the team. But we were able to, change configuration in a sane way. And so here's the big ideas again. As I said, there is much more. A lot of people contributed to Drupal 8 so far, over 600 people. So big thank you to these people. Yeah. But as I said, some of this is a work in progress. Some of them were screenshots. Other things were really working. So we have a lot more work to do. And so, the time is ticking. It's really time to get involved. So thank you. That's a quick preview. Hope you liked it. So.
I mean, yeah, right? Heck yeah, man.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
I know. I'm excited about it.
Right?
So, yeah.
So I love everything that I'm seeing with this. I particularly like that there's a lot of seemingly like breakthrough things that are happening with the content editing experience. Like as developers, and we build Drupal, in part for ourselves. So like the round of applause for views and core and CMI is understandable. But I think back to like, since I first saw you do a keynote in like Vancouver in 2006, you used to have this diagram of functionality versus usability as like a grid, and sort of Drupal kind of being the one that could go in on both axes, up and to the right. And I think where we've been lagging is, we've kind of been behind the curve in a lot of ways in terms of, the people that use Drupal the most, who are like actually logging in every day to Drupal sites and spending all day editing and managing content. They've had not the best experience with Drupal in some cases. So.
And I think and you're right. And there's organizations that have 30 people that do nothing but enter content all day.
Yeah.
And in a lot of organizations, what's changing right now is that the content creators and the marketing people are much more influential. Like, it feels like only a couple of years ago, it was primarily the IT organization that picked the CMS. It was a very technical decision. And nowadays, it's really the authors are very involved, and the marketing person is very involved. And so that's why it's so important, I think, to tackle this problem and to make Drupal look good and give it some sort of wow factor for these people as well. Oh,
definitely. I mean, I think that's as it should be. That's part of the democratization of the web in general, is letting the people that actually have to, are responsible for saying what they need to say, actually do the work versus, I remember when we first started, it was super common for, the communicator, the marketing person or whomever would write a Word doc and then hand that over to some IT person who would then type it into the CMS, or the webmaster would make it into a page. Right. And part of our journey has been to change that and really open it up so that people can participate much more directly.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So that's really exciting, and hopefully, it all comes through really soon. So one big thing that wasn't mentioned in there is the move to synchronize and adopt some of the Symfony framework pieces. Right. And I know that their project lead is giving one of the other keynotes. Is it tomorrow or Thursday?
I think it's on Thursday.
Thursday.
Yep.
So what prompted that decision?
Sure. I mean, well, a couple of things. We had some ambitious goals for Drupal 8 in terms of like the web services things and other things like that. And I think that triggered Larry Garfield and a group of other people to like really, look at how can we best implement this. And we looked at different frameworks, other frameworks that we could leverage, and we ended up picking Symfony because they've already implemented a lot of that functionality. And so it didn't make a lot of sense to re-implement that ourselves. So we decided to leverage Symfony to implement some of these underlying changes. And I think it's great from a technical point of view. I also think it's really great from a bigger strategic point of view, which is to, one, make Drupal core, or the underlying framework, a little bit more modern. It's not that the current framework isn't modern, it has a lot of Drupal-isms, let's put it that way. And so by leveraging Symfony, we make it less Drupal-y and more mainstream. And my hope is that we'll have a giant side effect to get more people into the community, and that would be for us a way to grow the project and to, sort of to get to the next level.
Well, that sounds good. I mean, in terms of, I think it's always good, I think, to see Drupal, how should I say this? It's not a critique to say that Drupal has a very unique culture and a lot of particularities to it, and that make it everything that it is. But sometimes it feels like we aren't as aware as we could be of all the other things that are happening out there in the open source world, on the internet, and with software. And we really don't need to reinvent some of these wheels. So like, it's similar to me. It seems similar to me as to when we made the decision to bring jQuery into Drupal, which really, without that, we would have been writing our own JavaScript to do all these things that we rely on, which that would have taken up a bunch of time. Probably wouldn't have been as good as jQuery. You wouldn't have been able to use all these other plugins that were around.
Right.
So,
and it's a big transition for us to leverage more of these other projects. And I think if you go back, I started Drupal 12 years ago, and at that time there wasn't a lot of libraries to use. Like jQuery didn't exist and Symfony didn't exist, and so we kind of had to invent a lot of our own.
Sure.
And along the way, obviously, all of these other projects emerged, and they've been proven to be great. And so it makes a lot of sense for us to change that mindset and to try and leverage more of them.
I agree. I agree. So the important question is, when is this all going to be done? When's it going to happen?
Right.
Do you have any sense about the release cycle?
Sure, yeah. So the goal would be to release Drupal 8, somewhere this time next year. So August next year, either before or after DrupalCon. That's what I set out as our goal. And that means we decided to freeze, feature freeze in December and to code freeze in February. So that means we don't have a whole lot of time left. It's like 3 months or so that we have left to feature freeze at least. So.
And will there be a little feature slush, perhaps?
It's a good question. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we'll do what's right for Drupal, right? But right now, I'm not inclined to move any of these dates, basically. I think, we laid out the game. We laid out the rules. Here's when we freeze. And I think it's our responsibility as a group, as a community, to try and manage within that time frame.
Cool. And do you feel generally optimistic about that? I mean, it's a pretty ambitious agenda.
Well, I think we've done a lot already, but there is definitely a lot more to do. And so it is very ambitious to try and get these things done. But we may have to make some tough decisions in terms of we will not be able to include some of the things that I've shown or other things into Drupal 8 because we didn't make it in time.
Right.
So, it's I feel like Drupal development right now, core development, is kind of in a happy phase. People are there's progress, there's momentum, things are being, committed. But now I have to switch gears a little bit and start to say no a little bit more to manage towards the time frame. And the only way for us to be successful is if we make that scalable and if all of us, other leaders in the core developer community also start to say no, right? So I can go around on my own and say no to all things, but it's it's going to create more stress because it's never fun to be told no.
No, definitely not. So one more question on this. A big change in the development process this time around was sort of the formal naming of these initiatives and delegating some authority to leaders of these initiatives to go out and do some of this. How do you think that's working?
I think it's working well. I think we've learned a lot from that, and we've tweaked it along the ways a little bit. But I think it's working well for a number of reasons. One, it gives people something to rally around. And we've been organizing sprints for each of these initiatives, and we've taken a little bit more structured approach. We have we have a bi-weekly call, so I guess that's one call every 2 weeks. Which each of these initiatives leads, and we get updates, and we try to sort of, work together that way. But I think it's also important from a messaging and kind of almost like a marketing point of view, because it tells the world what we're working on and what we believe matters. So I think it's been working well. I think we may tweak it a little bit. There's always things we learn, right? And we may tweak it for Drupal 9 and evolve the model, but I think, again, I think it worked well so far.
Good. Yeah, I think, democratizing the process, getting more people involved, and, eliminating our bus factor such as it is always a good thing. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about not just the core code development and Drupal 8, but also the sort of wider Drupal ecosystem.
Sure.
So the Captain Drupal had a kind of a big announcement.
Right, yeah.
And another recurring theme from some of your earlier keynotes has been this notion that, quote, the elephants are coming. Right? Large organizations are adopting Drupal, large companies are building Drupal practices, and now we see Drupal shops themselves are starting to agglomerate. At Denver, there was a phase 2 Treehouse merger announcement. And so, are the elephants here, and to what extent are they us?
All right. I think to a reasonable extent they are us, right? Because we now have a number of large Drupal companies, companies with over 100 people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's great. And I like the fact that they merged because, for Drupal to be successful within the enterprise and for bigger organizations, large organizations, they like to work with large organizations. Elephants like to party with elephants, I guess, because it takes some risk out of the equation for them, right? And so I think it's great that we see these big companies emerge because we can then service a new kind of market, and it's healthy as long, I guess, there is also new companies, small companies being created, right? So as long as we have that healthy creation of smaller companies, I think it's fine. So I think to a large extent, it's us. At the same time, the large system integrators, like an Accenture and a Capgemini and Wipro, they're all getting into Drupal as well. And I made a trip to India last year, I think around this time. And so I met with all of them because that's where all of their centers are. And each of those organizations that have tens of thousands of developers on staff, they're all building a Drupal practice.
Right.
And so, and in many ways they're still learning Drupal, right? But they'll get better and they'll get bigger as well. And so you should expect to run into them more and more, I think.
Right. The elephants are going to continue to come.
Right.
Speaking of large organizations, I know you don't usually talk about Acquia in your keynote, but there were a number of questions from the community, and I thought a few were going to ask. So
no
you guys are up to around 250 people now, right?
I think a little bit less. Yeah, I would say 240-ish.
240?
Hard to keep track. But.
For those of us who are out there, now, that's not like 240 developers sitting in some hall in Boston coding away all day, is it?
No, although that would be nice.
Yeah.
No, I guess so we are kind of a traditional enterprise software company. So that means that we have a lot of different people in the company, and I think a way to look at it is we're probably half of the staff is technical, and the other half is kind of non-technical. And so among the technical people, I think we have about 60-something engineers, building our products and helping with Drupal as well. I would say we have 40-plus people in support that actually provide, the support that we sell, and then we have a small number of consultants that, sort of help organizations. And then on the other side, the other 100-ish people, I guess, are, sales and marketing,
right.
And then something called G&A, which is, finance and HR and stuff.
Right.
And I think we have about 70 salespeople now. So, yeah.
And you also have within that organization, there's the office of the CTO, which you sort of personally direct,
right.
And that is more focused on working directly, giving back to Drupal and fixing problems in fixing some of the more fundamental problems with Drupal.
Right. So a lot of, almost everything that we do technically, we try to contribute back. So
right.
A lot of the other people as well. But I guess the office of the CTO, it's kind of my group, and we do a number of different things. We work on Spark, so about 4 or 5 people full time working on Spark. We have another program, it's called Large Scale Drupal.
It's a great acronym, by the way.
Yeah, LSD. So yeah, that's something else that we do, and we try to, I guess in a way we take maybe a little bit of a longer term view,
right,
and try to work on Drupal 8 a little bit more than say Drupal 7.
So what does Acquia really want? Like, what does success look like for Acquia? And do you see the potential for any conflicts between Acquia's success and Drupal's success?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to break down the question. So I think for us, success is enabling, organizations to build really great web experiences. And that means they need to be able to use Drupal, and Drupal needs to be great. But it's not just about Drupal. It's also, all of the other things that come with it, from support to hosting and all of these things. And so, enabling organizations to create these kinds of, killer web experiences, I think is kind of our mission or, vision. And I guess the second part of your question was, do I think there's a conflict of interest?
Do you think it's kind of a silly question. You're not going to say, yes, there's a conflict of interest. But
Right.
do you see the potential for any conflicts between what Acquia wants to do
Right.
as it continues to grow and as that business continues to develop and what the Drupal project might need?
Right. There's... Sure, yeah. I think what's important to realize is that, and that's the investment thesis of Acquia, really, that for Acquia to be successful, Drupal needs to be successful. So it's a big part of our DNA as a company to really try and make Drupal successful. And one thing which people may not know, but when I raised our $7 million Series A, actually I had the investors sign a document, and the document basically said that I, Dries, can make decisions that harm Acquia, if I feel it's in the best interest of Drupal. And so, and they signed it, and so they get it, and it was established on day one, and it has trickled down throughout the entire organization. So it's a big part of our culture. So is there a potential conflict of interest? Maybe, but I think, one of the things I'm really proud of is that I have, high integrity. And, I think whatever people criticize me on from time to time, I feel like I've always had the highest integrity, and I feel really good about every single decision we've made along the way in terms of helping to grow Drupal, and on top of that, building a great business. So, so I think we managed that really well, but feel free to always give us feedback. Thank you. And
it's cool to hear that you got that in writing.
Yeah. And it's more symbolic, really.
Right.
But yeah, have it in writing. And, I'll be honest, we'll make small mistakes along the way, and we'll fix them, when we do, so.
I think, personally, I think that you personally exhibit a great deal of integrity and wisdom in the choices that you make there. And I think that as we continue to mature and grow, especially on the business side of things, there's more and more competition, and I think that can make people nervous. Like your company and my company compete quite fiercely at times. But I think that can be healthy. I think it's just a matter of learning how to, since Acquia is a kind of de facto an elephant, how to work in partnership with people without kind of accidentally or them fearing that you're going to take a step backward and squash them.
I think there seems to be some fear around competition in the Drupal world. And I think it doesn't make much sense because right now we're in a phase where there's so much work, and there's not enough people actually there to do the work. And so sometimes people tell me they walked away from Drupal because they couldn't find the talent. And so, that's a big issue, right? And so there is plenty of room for competition. And sometimes it surprises me that there isn't a little bit more competition. Like when I look at sort of the Drupal shops that specialize, there was like, Curve, and they specialized in migrations. And why isn't there like 4 more, companies that specialize in migrations, or, pick any of these, special performance. It feels like there's only like, a couple, Drupal shops that really, target performance as their thing. And so I feel like there should be many more in each of those categories and other categories. And at the end of the day, it will be healthy for Drupal because it's healthy for the, the users of Drupal.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to your point, which I also would echo, which is, as larger organizations form, either by, big existing companies coming in or existing Drupal organizations, having these mega mergers, we need to continue to see the birth of new organizations coming up from the ground up. And so if you've ever thought about starting a Drupal business, I would say go for it. It's a lot of fun. So what do you think that, what are they? Because you spend some of your time flying around and talking to people that want to adopt Drupal or are considering it. What do you see from those conversations as the major barriers to more widespread adoption?
Well, there's a number of things, but definitely there's a talent issue, meaning there's a lack of Drupal experts out there, and it makes it tough, right, to get your site built in time. I think, depending on who you talk to, authoring experience is a big deal for them. Like, they need to sell this thing in Drupal. The techies love it, but they still need to convince the rest of the organization to use it. And sometimes we struggle there, and so that's why we're so focused on some of these things. Some people talk to me about the need for certification. It seems to be, nowadays it seems to be on a lot more people's minds. So, when will there be certification?
That plays into the talent issue question, because
exactly.
How do you know whether you're hiring really good people or not? Right. Certification may tell you that.
Right.
So I think, we're talking about these issues of a project that is maturing and that is really growing up. Like you said, started 12 years ago and really has been on a pretty wild growth curve for almost, for a good 7-8 years, I would think. That's a long time. Do you feel, it feels to me sometimes that we're asking too much of some people. Like there's a sustainability issue, especially when it comes to core development. You know, when you talk about trying to be an initiative leader and you're on bi-weekly calls and expected to travel the sprints, and if you're doing all that as a volunteer, that's a lot to do as a volunteer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, things changed dramatically. I mean, I remember back in the day where if I were to, you know, when I changed an API in core, I would actually go into the contrib repository and fix every module. Right. That was great. I mean, obviously that changed a lot, right? And so I do spend a lot of my time thinking about how we evolve Drupal and how we sustain it. And in doing so, I look at other projects, and there is not that many good comparables, but Linux, you know, obviously is one. And you know, and I even looked outside of open source projects, but there seems to be a trend where, you know, things that start you know, on a voluntary basis eventually evolve to be more and more institutionalized. And if you look at Linux, for example, you know, obviously it started as a hobby project as well, but now, at some point in the game, a number of companies decided to really bet on Linux. You know, one of them being IBM, and they said, you know, we're going to throw out our own operating system and we're going to use Linux. And so right now they employ, you know, dozens of people that do nothing but work on the Linux kernel. And the same thing happened with Red Hat or you know, Dell and others. And so it seems to be that that is a very common evolution, and you know, it may be the case that we are part of that evolution.
But there, in that case, there aren't really like, there's not an incumbent, you know, large company that has
Right.
its own CMS that would throw it out, because I mean, one of the interesting things about the space that we're in is that the web is still very much an open space. Like there aren't any like key players that would just be like, oh, we'll adopt a Drupal, and suddenly there's like 20 engineers.
Yeah, and so that kind of freaked me out, because the question that I asked myself and others is, who is going to be the IBM in the Drupal world? You know, at what point will there be a really large company that says, I'm going to employ 30 people to work on Drupal core? Because that's what it may need to make Drupal core development sustainable at some point. And I couldn't really answer the question. I mean, Acquia maybe at some point, but I think you know, it's not enough, right? There needs to be more companies like this. And so in talking to other people, I think at some point, you know, realize that maybe there is not one or two companies or 3 or 4 companies that are investing, you know, millions and millions of dollars a year in core development, but maybe instead in the Drupal world there is 100 companies, you know, investing $1 million each, or you know, even less than $1 million each, you know, 1,000 companies investing $100,000 each year. And so that actually triggered me to start the large-scale Drupal initiative, which is you know, something which we're trying to bootstrap at Acquia, but the goal is to bring together the largest users and to see if they want to chip in some money and, you know, jointly pay for fixing pain points that they all have. Because if you look at them, they all kind of have the same, you know, issues. Like if you look at media companies, they tend to struggle with workflow-related things or content staging. If you look at companies in higher education, a lot of them seem to struggle with single sign-on. And so if you actually start to work with them, you see that each of them, you know, fix this issue, you know, on their own.
Right.
And so there's a lot of wasted effort and money. And so why don't we bring them together and try to fix them as a team of people and create that kind of collaboration across these organizations? So that's what we're trying to do. And I think that may be a way for us to, you know, one of hopefully different ways for us to help sustain Drupal development, right? Because then hopefully there will be a lot of money flowing through large-scale Drupal, and that money, we actually, so the way it works is also, you know, we kind of turn around and work with the right people in the community to build the things that they need. So it's not like we do the implementation internally. We're kind of like the broker between these organizations and the community. That's how I look at our role.
That's interesting, because I think, you know, anybody who's helped to manage or run a Drupal shop, you know, we solve the same problems, maybe on a slightly smaller scale, where you work with client A, B, C, and D, and you know that you end up re-implementing the same type of solution as a one-off again, and can you get the budget or the time to polish it enough to contribute it back? I know that some shops have been more successful than others, but it sounds like what you're talking about is trying to institute a way that is sort of project-wide. Gives some of the ability for people to highlight common issues and certainly large-scale stakeholders. Would that be something that would be open to wider participation someday?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're very open about the program. And, to be honest, we're kind of experimenting right now. There's early signs that it could be really successful, but it's not the solution to everything. I mean, maybe there is room for a small-scale Drupal.
Right.
Where the objectives of that group could be to make Drupal really successful on the low end, and maybe you can go and raise money from the hosting companies because they have a lot of small users.
Right.
And so I think maybe hopefully we can crack the code and make this really successful, but then hopefully it can also act as a template for others within the Drupal community to do some of the same. So.
Yeah, I think that's exciting because there has always been this lingering question of how does core get built? And we have these problems of people getting burnt out because too much it is a lot, and then you also have the problems of sometimes the people that end up working on core, it's because that they have thank goodness they're there and doing it, but it's because that they have time. I know I haven't contributed very much to core in the past 2 to 3 years ever, but it's because I've been very busy doing actually on the front lines, so to speak, and implementing things. And I always felt it was strange. I always felt a strange sort of disconnect in some cases between core development and the problems that implementers are actually facing. And I think it's not anybody's fault. It's mostly because the implementers are too busy implementing to really contribute very, very heavily. And it seems like with an initiative like this or other processes like this that allow for more of idea exchange to float between people out there on the front lines and people building the core of the platform, we could see some really interesting innovations.
Right. Yeah. And just to be really clear, we're also doing other things to make Drupal more sustainable, from optimizing our processes to improving our tools so that, the people that only have a few hours to contribute every week or every day, can be more efficient and scale. So, I think we need to address the problem from every angle.
Well, and so to what extent, how much of this is about what you're doing personally? How much of this is about what Aqua is doing? How much of this is about what the Drupal Association should do? Because it seems like there are a couple different entities that are, can play this facilitating role in different ways. And the Drupal Association sort of, Jacob's done a really great job of that, I think, and it's kind of gone through this pretty big reboot over the past couple of years.
Right. Well, yeah, so, it's a good question. So I think there's a big role to play for the Drupal Association. They're already responsible for the infrastructure. They're responsible for the software that we use to collaborate, the project module and all, these kinds of things. And one of the things we've done compared to last year is so last year I spent a lot of my time, and others obviously helped a big deal, it's kind of rebooting the way we work at the Drupal Association. And already you see, great payoffs there. We have more DrupalCons. We now have staff, and we've actually built, one of the things we've done to answer your question is we basically built a group, a team of people whose job it is to make Drupal.org better and to work with the volunteers in the community as well. And so hopefully the Drupal Association can help fund and help drive some of that innovation. And our vision is really to turn Drupal.org, or at least the collaboration side of Drupal.org, into something which people love as much as they love, say, GitHub, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of work, and it's not going to happen unless we help make it happen, I think.
Well, so that begs another interesting question, though. And one of the more interesting issue threads that somebody forwarded me when I was soliciting questions was about, as we look to integrate with other projects, as we look to say, work more with Symfony in particular, There's the desire to be able to contribute upstream sort of from Drupal, and whether or not the Drupal project will forever remain kind of an island on its own infrastructure, or how do we, there's a lot of tricky things. There's legalities with like whether, there are certain projects that don't want everything to be GPL'd. There's also infrastructure questions, like a lot of projects want to be on GitHub, and we want to be on, or do we really want to try to beat GitHub at being the best social coding
versus
platform,
using GitHub.
Versus just using it.
Right. These are all tricky questions that need a lot of conversation and debate within the community because, they're not easy decisions for us to make, but we do have a desire to work with other projects, jQuery, Symfony, and that's on multiple levels. Like there is a technical desire to contribute back changes, and yes, there is some licensing questions that we need to resolve, but then there's also collaborating with them, at DrupalCon, for example, and that's one of the reasons we invited, Fabien to DrupalCon because, adopting Symfony is kind of a big deal, and now we need to retrain, tens of thousands of Drupal people on Symfony as well. And so it's really important that we try to get closer to Symfony and that we, get Symfony experts at DrupalCon and vice versa, that we as Drupal represent Drupal, at Symfony events. And so we're looking into ways that we can do more of it, basically, and, have more Symfony presentations, of more jQuery presentations, and so forth. So that's kind of at that level as well versus just a technical level.
Cool. And I agree. These are longer conversations in terms of what should stay on the Drupal island versus what should become a little boat that sails off to another island, or do we build a bridge to other islands? But I think I think that for our future success, we have to be more connected with other projects and other services because that's how the internet works. That's how the web works. It's about connections.
Right. Yeah, I don't disagree.
Okay. So I have one other question about just sort of processy stuff. There was a governance sprint recently, which is, I think, that was a first, right?
It was a first, yep.
And so, what prompted you or whomever to decide that it was a good idea to have a governance sprint, and what was that about? What did you do?
Sure. It's about evolving our project and making it scale.
Right.
And so again, in the beginning, I did everything, right? I wrote all of the code, I maintained the website, I upgraded the Linux kernel on the box that the website ran on. And so now, obviously, there's a lot of people involved and a lot of people doing a really great job. And so over time, I've transitioned some of these responsibilities to other people. And some of them are clearly defined, like, for example, the Drupal Association runs DrupalCon, because I used to, run DrupalCon as well. and so everybody now understands that what the Drupal Association does, right? But in other areas, it's not all that clear. And so we're trying to resolve that, because, say, for example, a good example could be the webmasters team. There's a great group of people that kind of administer the content on Drupal.org. And, almost always they can make decisions. Sometimes it's a little slow, but, at the end of the day, they usually get to a conclusion. But in the case they don't, who do they escalate to?
Right.
Do they escalate to me, or do they escalate to the Drupal Association, right? And so what the governance sprint is about, and what it really started, is a process to get some of these things, and this was just one example, to get some of these things better defined. Another example is conflict resolution. Like if there's personal issues between two people, what do we do? Right now it escalates ultimately to me. I mean, it goes to other people, like WebChick gets involved, and all of these people get involved trying to manage that. But if that doesn't work, it kind of comes to me. And the question is does that make sense? Or do we put in place a little bit more of a committee or something, right? That can make those decisions, and let's formalize it a little bit better. Another quick example is CVS applications or Git applications. I get a lot of emails. People are frustrated sometimes that it takes a long time, or whatever. And I think it's not very clear right now to the community who's responsible for approving Git applications, right? And a lot of people have ideas of how they could make it better, but very few people actually know who they should talk to and what the process is to make it better. And so it's another example of something which we need to be a little bit more crisp about. And that's what the governance sprint was about. But it will be a long process, though. But I think it's important because that's how we become more efficient and how we're going to grow as a community.
Well, so it sounds like really what you're taking on, or what the project is trying to take on in that context is, basically, it's removing the Dries bus factor for one.
Right.
Right. I think that while we all love you and we think you do a good job, I think you do a good job as a dictator. I don't know if everyone does, but I think most agree.
Mm-hmm.
It would be kind of tragic if all these things that currently route through you were suddenly blocked.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that you probably have like a few too many things to do anyway, and your time needs to be most valuably spent. The other thing that occurs to me that from what you're saying is it sounds like it's actually a really good time. It sounds like it's a really good time if you want to become more involved in Drupal in the project. There are a lot of opportunities.
Right. Yeah. There's so many things. We need so much help as a project all over the map, from technical help to providing support to people in the forums to helping us to deal with these governance questions.
Yeah.
And it's very much we're very much constrained on people contributing time and effort.
Yeah, I think it's just important to sort of echo that message, because you can come to a conference and you say, oh, there's a Drupal association and they're handling all these things, and there's a lot of shops and they're handling all these things. And the truth is that while we're doing very well, I see that it seems like we're blocked on people, and we need to bring more people into the project. And for people who are in the project who want to become more involved, you shouldn't mistake the situation as being that everything's under control and it's all handled.
Oh no, a lot of people are involved with everything. Even DrupalCon, tens and tens of volunteers putting in hundreds of hours to make a conference like this happen, and they don't get paid for it. There is a Drupal association that helps, but it still takes a lot of people to contribute and help. And so, we should be thankful for that, and we should also make sure, we keep getting enough people to help.
Yeah, it seems like to me there's all these interesting tensions in how we grow and mature. So there's this tension between wanting to become more formalized and documented and have processes for things, while also still having that kind of duocratic spirit of just go out and make something. Code is gold. If you make it better, it is better, and you can do that. There's an interesting tension in there, and there's an interesting tension between larger groups forming in the commercial ecosystem while also saying, but we want more little companies too.
Right.
And I don't think this is wrong. I think this is just the interesting paradox of a project that's really in an interesting transition phase.
I think it's very natural at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's how things grow.
Yeah. Growing pains.
Growing pains, and growing processes.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question about Drupal's success. And one of the things that I really like about you as a project leader is that you're down to earth and you're pretty humble. And that's kind of a typically European trait, as I've observed. But I'm going to try to ask you to dig into your 2 years of experience in Boston and answer it as with all of the Americanness you can. And I don't mean any disrespect to Europeans, but I want to ask the question this way, because what does it mean for us to succeed?
Yeah, I think I guess the blunt answer is for Drupal to be the dominant platform for building websites. So,
what do you guys think about that?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's this way in which another common theme in your keynotes has often been this notion that we're doing great work, which I agree with, and we're part of something that's much bigger than us, which I also agree with. It's obvious, and that if we're successful, we have a chance to be a kind of footnote in internet history. But I think if we're the dominant web platform, that's maybe more than a footnote.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's important for two reasons. One, at the end of the day, if you look at other technologies, and I've spoken about this before, but if you look at databases, there used to be hundreds of databases. Now people can usually think of 2 or 3 databases, Oracle, MySQL, maybe 1 or 2 more. But there is also, there used to be, just like in the CMS world, hundreds and hundreds of databases. And it's kind of true for operating systems. There used to be a lot of operating systems. Right now it's pretty much, Microsoft and maybe the Mac and, Linux, and that's where most people's, stop.
Right.
And, eventually the same thing will happen with, CMSs. And so we want to be part of those 2 that people will use, right? And so it's required that we are dominant for us to succeed in the long run because of the way technology evolves. But the other reason, the second reason, is because we are doing something that really matters. We are making the world a better place by enabling so many people to connect with each other, to share, by enabling so many organizations. There's tens of thousands of non-profits using Drupal, many really large, Amnesty and Doctors Without Borders and all of these people, and we're enabling them, kind of indirectly, to do a better job communicating with their base, to do a better job fulfilling their mission as a nonprofit. And the same thing is true for governments. Like over 100 governments nowadays, from the US government, which we talked about earlier, before our keynote, to many other governments around the world. They're also trying to use Drupal to change the way they work and to change the way they interact and participate with citizens. And so that's kind of a very, very big deal. Yeah. And so, we need to be dominant to survive. And we need to be dominant because I really feel like we can make a pretty big difference and be more than just a footnote. So.
Yeah, I think that that's a great ambition, and I think that some of the things that you're showing with Drupal 8, they kind of get me excited because I can see how this is something of a breakthrough, and you could say there was the world before and the world after, and that it was a different place, and that it was a significantly better place, and I like that kind of vision. I think you should be loud and proud about it. And we should all be loud and proud about it. Yeah, sure. Round of applause for Drupal. Making the world a better place. Making the web work. Because, I'll ask a question, and I hope you don't mind. Quick show of hands. How many people have been, working on the internet or building websites for more than 5 years, by show of hands? So, basically everybody. Do we remember, how bad it used to be? That's one of the reasons that I don't mean to knock on Microsoft in this, but with the deprecation of legacy browser support. Remember when the internet, it was a big deal, it was going to change the world, but then you actually had to make it work in all these different browsers, and that just sucked the life out of everything. And now that's a solved problem for the most part, right? You can use HTML5 and use these modern, amazing techniques, and it will work everywhere, including on a phone, and that changes everything. And I think that when we can credibly stand up and say that if you use Drupal to build your website in the same way, that will change everything for you, that'll be a revolution. And I think that's kind of what we're working towards. And that's what I really liked. I started to see that and feel that in the Drupal 8 presentation. Right. What do you think we need to do as a project to get there?
Well, I think there's a lot of things, but
yeah, I think if you were going to boil it down to a couple,
right? I think
axioms.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing which we need to do, it's we need to continue to collaborate with each other, work together. And in collaborating with each other, I think we need to be always a little bit dissatisfied with our work. I think one of our best traits is that we're always self-critical. We're never, ever happy. Right. And that in combination, it's true, right? We released Drupal 7. It was an amazing release. We had a big party in 130 countries all over the world simultaneously. And the next day, people were grumpy because this wasn't good enough. This could have been done better. And it's great. We should celebrate these successes, and we should be really proud of what we do. But at the same time, we should be critical, and we should always strive to be better and get better through collaboration by working together with all of us. So if we do that, I think we'll succeed.
All right, I agree. I think everyone can agree. We'll remain unsatisfied, but remain collaborative. Yeah? Okay. Well, there's only one question left that I didn't ask before at the beginning. It was sort of a warm-up question, but I wanted to get right into it. But I want to know personally, what hair product do you use?
It's from Garnier.
Uh-huh.
And it's, I think it says ultra strong. And it's kind of a gel. I don't know. I should bring it out maybe tomorrow.
Yeah,
and show.
you know, just show people. Post a photo on your blog.
Right.
Anyway, thank you all so much, and thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure. I think it's group photo time, so let's try to be expedient and organized about that. And we'll all see you outside at the Big Blue Drop.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.